Top five, top five, top five.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Countdown, the #1 sports ranking show on YouTube. First episode of 2024. As you can see, we got some new backdrops. We've got a new year ahead, man. We're ready to go. Let's get into it.
2024, as y'all see, it's a new setup. And just like a lot of teams in 2023 that had dismal starts, they can't wait to get to the start of 2024 where they have a fresh team, a fresh start, and a new look.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with the 2024 New Year's resolutions in sports. Basically the 5 best things that we want to see happen in this year. So if we were to go back a year ago for 2023, some things that could have been 2023 resolutions is like, Dan Snyder finally selling the team. A lot of fans would want to see that. Or Damian Lillard, finally going to a contender.
But shit, even something as simple as the Detroit Pistons getting a fucking W.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of different things that could come into play. But before we get into this episode,
make sure y'all smash that like button and double tap that subscribe because we're coming back every single week with some tough ass content.
For sure. So getting into the countdown of the 5 best New Year's resolutions in sports that we want to see as sports fans. Starting us off with number 5, of course, we got to go with the best baseball player of this generation, Mike Trout, finally being on a contender. And that's why it says it below is he's on a contender. So maybe that is in LA, maybe it's somewhere else, but we want to see some meaningful baseball games from Mike Trout. This is a guy who has accomplished everything there is to accomplish. A first ballot Hall of Famer. If he were to retire tomorrow, he's got the MVPs, he's got Silver Sluggers, Gold Gloves, all these sort of batting titles, so many individual accomplishments. But the team success just isn't there, and that's what he needs to prove, and we want to see him play in those October baseball games with it all on the line and see what he's really capable of when it matters most.
Yeah, when you think about teams in LA, you think about primetime games, big-time moments, besides teams like the Angels and the Clippers who have just not been able to figure it out. And unfortunately for the Angels, they've had one of the best players of all time, a clear first-ballot Hall of Famer, a no-doubt 5-tool player, but they haven't been able to have any success in the playoffs, and they haven't even been relevant as a franchise despite being in one of the biggest markets. And now that Shohei Ohtani has gone across town to the Dodgers, Mike Trout's just sitting there with his hands held like, what am I supposed to do on this team by myself? So hopefully in 2024, we can see him with a different franchise and see him actually play in some big-time baseball games.
No doubt. So getting into number 4, though, we switch into the basketball world with Damian Lillard or Chris Paul finally winning that elusive championship that would really cement their Hall of Fame careers, Brandon.
Dame and CP3, despite being 2 great players and clear first ballot Hall of Famers, they have not been able to play for that Larry O'Brien trophy or not been able to win that Larry O'Brien trophy. We've now seen Dame go from Portland to Milwaukee, and we've seen Chris Paul go from Phoenix to Golden State. Now they're both well positioned to win their first championship, and hopefully we can see the most talented players in the league finally get over the hump and play in the most important basketball series in the world.
Yeah, 2 players who are very similar in the aspect that, both of them have had these Hall of Fame careers, such great individual success, but haven't been able to climb the mountaintop, haven't been able to win that Larry O.B. like you said. But really 2 very different players in the fact that Chris Paul seems like he's had a lot of opportunities for that trophy, with the Clippers, with Houston, with Phoenix, but just been derailed by injuries so many times in the month of May and having those things bite him when it matters most. Whereas Damian Lillard hasn't really had maybe one realistic shot at the title, but even then they got swept by Golden State because they just didn't have enough horses. And now Chris Paul is on Golden State, the team of this generation, which seems like the worst iteration of them. We'll see what they can do at the trade deadline. And now Dame isn't even the bus driver. He's got Giannis, one of the best all-around players in the game. But on offense, make no mistake about it, he's absolutely going to be a driving force on that team, and it'll be interesting to see if he can finally win that elusive championship. So moving on to number 3, we started out with baseball, hit a little basketball. Now we got to go to the gridiron for some NFL resolutions in 2024. Yes, Brandon, we really want to see a star wide receiver in Kansas City. This is a team that is so explosive, so electric, such a dynamic offense when they're clicking on all cylinders, and that has just not been what we've seen in 2023. This is probably the best team of the 2020s, the best player of the 2020s, but they haven't looked like that without that star receiver in place. We saw what they did with Tyreek Hill, with Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins. When they had weapons galore, it was one of the best, most exciting offenses we've seen. And then now that they don't have those pieces, we're seeing just a lot of struggle and difficulties with that offense. And sure, there's some games where they play well, and then there's some games where they just fall right on their fucking face. And as football fans, we want to see the best players play their best, and Mahomes clearly is one of those type of guys. And so if they can add a guy like T. Higgins or Hollywood Brown, maybe trade up in the first round to draft a star receiver, just adding someone like that to pair with what they have could really take them back to that top level that, you know, brings that level of excitement for football fans everywhere.
Yeah, surprisingly, Kansas City's defense has been way more impressive than their offense this year. We've seen a lot of frustration on the sidelines from Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and you're just not used to seeing Andy Reid-ran offenses sputter at this time of the year. But fortunately, they can go out and get T. Higgins of the world and get a top-flight receiver and also take a receiver with that first-round pick. Luckily for them, they did hit last year with the Rashee Rice pick, because if the Chiefs didn't have Rashee Rice right now, Lord knows what this offense would look like. So we need to see Kansas City back to what they do best, and that's throwing the ball around the field, having a lot of fun, putting up a lot of points. And I think in 2024, we'll see them get right back to that, especially with an elite GM and Brett Veach.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs are a top flight team, kind of a top dog in the NFL. But moving into number 2, we got an underdog type of team in the Detroit Lions, finally winning a playoff game, Brandon.
Good gracious, they haven't won a playoff game in 31 years.
31
and the Lions
years.
have had some success in the 2010s when they had Jim Caldwell. They made the playoffs a couple times. They had a couple 8-8 seasons. But we're used to seeing the Lions waste some incredible primes of some elite players like Calvin Johnson's, Matt Stafford's, and they had nothing to show for it at the end of the day. But luckily, the Lions did a great job hiring Dan Campbell as their head coach. They made some great draft picks in the Aiden Hutchinsons of the world, and now their franchise is literally trending upwards. That trade for Jared Goff to get Matt Stafford out of town wound up being a very good one. He's looked like a franchise quarterback, surprisingly. And we need to see the Lions have playoff success. We need it. They deserve it. They're one of the most historic franchises of all time. They have already won the NFC North. Thankfully, it's been the first time in a long time they've done that as well. So hopefully we can keep seeing one of that franchise trend upward and upward and upward. They've taken some wild picks, especially in the 2023 draft. Jahmyr Gibbs went earlier than expected. They took Jack Campbell at 18, and both of those picks are looking like they're paying off early. So hopefully we can see the Lions build on this success and hopefully make a playoff run at the start of the 2024 season.
Yeah, I mean, 31 years without a playoff win is just insane. Something those fans deserve, something that organization deserves, and something the city of Detroit deserves. You know, seeing your team win a playoff game, a meaningful game, one that you're beating typically another great team, it just means a lot and can give them such momentum going into these future years with that young core in place. And not even the fact that they've just went 31 years without a playoff win, but only the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets are the only teams that have even not made the playoffs longer than they have. And finally, they ended that streak this year. But here in 2024, this is probably the first resolution that either can or will not happen, is seeing the Lions finally win that playoff game and move on to the next round. And so moving on to number 1, the number 1 resolution we want to see in 2024 in the world of sports is let's see the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox get back to championship or even playoff contention, okay? In 2023, that was not what we saw whatsoever. The Red Sox were last place in the division. The Yankees weren't far ahead. But let's look at 2024. This is all about looking at the horizon, looking at what's next, and let's make no mistake about it, okay? This is an organization that still wants to compete, a fan base that's ready to support them no matter what, and a payroll that's ready to win divisions as well. And obviously they have, a lot of competition with Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Toronto, but when these two teams are contending for championships and divisions and having those AL East rivalries, it just makes such a better product for the game of baseball. And whether you're a Dodgers fan, a Cubs fan, a Nationals fan, or whatever, you got to appreciate what baseball is when the Yankees and Red Sox are at the cream of the crop.
No doubt, baseball is not the same when the Yankees and the Red Sox are not competing at the highest level. These are two of the most important franchises in baseball history, two of the longest standing franchises in baseball history. When you think of baseball, probably the first two teams that come to your mind are the Yankees and the Red Sox, or they're damn sure at least two of the top 5 teams that you think of. And the Red Sox have made the playoffs one time in the last 5 years. One time. I don't think anybody would have predicted that 5 years ago. You're used to seeing the Dustin Pedroias, the Big Poppies of the world, and now they've just been stuck with some unknown players, and that's just not the Red Sox way. And we talk about the Bronx Bombers, we're talking about one of the biggest payrolls in baseball. They're some of the biggest hitters in baseball, one of the most stacked lineups in baseball, but they have not made the World Series since 2009. That makes absolutely no sense, especially in that market, especially with those resources for this team to be sputtering the way that they have. And just like you said, Rob, these teams finished fifth and fourth in the AL East. They finished behind Baltimore, Tampa Bay, and Toronto. Those are three teams that have payrolls that are nowhere even close to the Yankees and Red Sox, have not had the success anywhere close to the Yankees and Red Sox, don't have a third or even a fourth of the amount of Hall of Famers that those two franchises have. We need to see these teams back on top, and we think that will happen in 2024.
So we've seen what Alex Cora is capable of doing, exceeding expectations in Boston. We've seen what the Yankees are able to do when their pitching staff isn't completely depleted like it was in 2023. So looking forward to seeing those two teams back in prominence, putting baseball back on the map, and just overall enhancing the viewing experience for every baseball fan. So these are the 5 best New Year's resolutions in the world of sports for 2024. You know, they're not some unrealistic stuff like, you know, Shohei Ohtani surpassing Barry Bonds for the most home runs in a season or anything. These 5 things could realistically happen. They're 5 things we want to see, but leave your comments as well of what you want to see in 2024 as well.
At this time next year, when you're sitting back and reflecting on all the dope shit that happened in 2024, remember this episode of Countdown. Remember when we broke down the 5 New Year's resolutions of the 2024 season, and think about how all 5 of those things miraculously hit. We're going to continue to keep elevating, and we're going to continue to keep getting better. So continue showing us love by hitting that like and hitting that subscribe so we can keep making great content.
Absolutely. See you all next time.
Peace.